First of all, I'd like to just kick off with a sort of, not quite a health warning, but I feel completely inadequate to be doing this because I'm not a writer, I'm not a trained writer, and so all I'll be doing is sharing some tips second-hand from someone else, okay? But I think I've learned so much from these very, very few basic tips that it will be helpful. The first thing is, the first principle I think of any writing is about audience. Who is it that you're writing for? And that the important thing isn't the space on the paper in front of you, it's the space in the head of the person that's reading what you're writing. So if I'm writing this for Betsy, what I need to do is to think, okay, where's Betsy coming from in this? What's her background? Where will this be landing? Whatever I say, it's going to be landing in someone's head. So what's already in that person's head? Are they interested in the subject? Are they not interested? So really the first principle is that the writing isn't about you, it's about the reader. And yet so much of writing, certainly in development circles, it's basically downloading what we know. And we're going to download it, and I'm sure it'll be relevant to someone. And we'll just download our brains, and that's good writing. But it's incredibly hard to sort of really define who the audience is. I remember, I think the last thing I wrote for Intrek, my organization, they just refused. I said, tell me who this is for. Tell me, which group it's aimed at. And then they said, no, it's for everyone. It's got to be for everyone. And I said, no, that doesn't help me. Give me an audience. And it's very difficult to write anything that will appeal to everyone because everyone's coming from a different place. And so the tighter you can get, the better it'll be. One of the other things about audience is we need to start from the assumption that they're not as interested in this subject as we are. And sometimes, we think, no, but this is really exciting. But actually, if we start from the assumption that the person reading this isn't going to be as interested in the Africa encounter than you are. And so actually we have to work a bit hard to gain people's interest. We have to work harder than we imagine. We think, but it was interesting, it was exciting, it was fun. So therefore, they'll be excited about it. So with the audience, picture them. Try and picture their age, try and picture their gender, try and picture their nationality, their language. And again, the closer you can get, the more focused you can get, the better. Again, things like, if we think that, okay, this person that I'm writing for doesn't have English as a first language, so therefore I'm going to have to reduce all the long, beautiful words that I love and that just encapsulate it beautifully. Just the right word, but no one else really quite understands it. But it doesn't matter because it's just the right word. No, we have to write for the audience. And when you're writing, picture them. So I'm writing about this thing to someone. What's their face look like as they read your first paragraph? Are their eyebrows raised? Are they just a bit bored? People are incredibly busy. We've got to excite them. And as you write your first paragraph, there'll probably be often two questions, or in fact, as people read what you write, there'll be two questions that often will crop up. The first one is, so what? A very exciting African encounter. How does it, what's it to do with me? So what? And we have to be answering that so what question right from the start, because it's going to be there as they read it. And unless we've sort of said to them something about the so what, then they probably won't read on. The reason I just got to ask to do one paragraph is that that's often all you'll get. And if you don't grab people early, it's going to be difficult. But we'll come on to that again in a minute. The other question, the second question that will go on in many people's minds is, yes, but, and that's the sort of skeptical, that's that skeptical response. Yeah, fine, but what about this? But what about that? You talk about, I don't know, spirituality, nudity, but what about the abuse of it? And again, it's recognizing there's going to be these two questions that you constantly have to look at. The so what question and the yes, but response. And just to be aware of that. So whenever you're writing, try and define your audience. And again, you can't define it too perfectly. And your audience is always bigger than one person anyway. Or not always, but yeah, sometimes it's even limited to one person. But think about them. Again, even if you're writing internally, picture the people you're writing for. You're writing something to your colleagues, these 5 lines. Picture one of your colleagues. Now, again, think of their facial expressions. So first of all, first principle is you must start with the audience. Nothing else. Who are you writing for? And just get that really, really clear. And you're not writing for the world. Second point is the introduction, the start. It has to grab people. And as I said, if you can't grab them in the first 5 lines, you've probably lost them. Because, Lena has got thousands of things to read. Why should she bother to carry on to the end of this? So you've got 5 lines or an introduction to grab them. And it's got to be, it needs to be enticing. And even before the introduction, the title. What's your title? And you can go back to it. But someone said to me once that imagine your friend is just about to get on a bus or disappear down a tube station or whatever it be. What words are you going to shout to them that makes them stop and get off? And say, tell me more. So if you shout to them, a report on the Africa encounter in Nairobi, the 22nd of November, are they going to get off? Probably not. So the title needs to sort of intrigue or grab their attention or something. And even we can concentrate on those first 5 words. Again, I've been told, so this is all secondhand, first 5 words are really, really critical. And so we'll go back to your first 5 words. Have you grabbed someone in the first 5 words? Is there something there that is interesting and enticing, or are they fairly dull words? I went to an Africa meeting and there were 48 people, whatever. But is there something in those first 5 words even that makes the person think, that's an interesting word, like, I don't know, exhausting, or it was a nightmare, or I don't know, whatever it was. But something in those first 5 words has to grab their attention, because our attention is much, much less than we would like it to be. The other thing right at the beginning is the importance of painting a picture and telling a story, even from the start. We need to draw people in, bring some drama into it. We want them to, we read novels that are page turners. Even in this, we need to get people wanting to read the next bit. And even in that first paragraph, that you've got to want them to read the second paragraph, because they may only read the first. You think about the way you read a newspaper. You often will just read the headline, and if that doesn't grab you, don't bother. But then you might read the beginning bit, the stand first, or whatever it's called. And if that doesn't grab you, you don't bother. And maybe the stand first, the first 5 lines will be all you read. And again, it's that question in the first 5 lines is, what's in it for me? What's in it for the reader? Why should your colleague at BN bother to read this? What's in it for them? Why is it important to them? The other thing that most of us do, again, the way that most of the writing that we've done at school and university, again, it's not about grabbing, it's about arguing a point. It's about proving that we can see 2 sides of an argument. Again, that's probably not what this is about. The other thing that we do, we read novels. And in novels, what happens is that the story gradually unfolds, and then you go on this journey, and then you get to the end, and then there's what's called the denouement, where it's all revealed at the end. It's like a mystery. You have all the things, and then finally at the end the murderer is revealed. Again, that's the way that we tend to write, and we think, okay, we'll leave the best until last, and we'll take this person on this journey, and then right at the end we'll reveal the message and what it is that we want to tell them. But they probably won't have journeyed with you that far. Because the third point is the message, and the message is really, really, really important, and you need to tell it to them right at the start. And you think, but that's my best bit. I want to keep it till later. But no, unless you tell them right at the start what it is, they're probably not going to read on. In terms of reading, if you're reading something, how much percentage of it do you take in, roughly? 10%? Others?
Around 5%.
Yeah? It's somewhere between the two. It's about 7%, the research has shown. So of all the stuff that you've written, and when you write this report back to your organization or however you're trying to communicate it, or you're trying to write your story to feed into the next newsletter, which I hope you're all going to be doing, by the way, remember that people will only remember about 7% of all it is that you've written. So you've got to make it really clear and make sure that the message is in that 7%. And if you try and tell them 15 things that you think is important, they're going to pick maybe one or two of them, at the most two, and those might not be the ones that you wanted them to pick. So what is it, think in one sentence, what is it that you want to communicate? If there was one thing that they could take away from this piece that you're writing, what would it be? You know, if you finish, you wouldn't believe it, but, and then what is it? What's the essence of what you want to communicate? And often in any writing, it's going back to what you've written and saying, okay, how do I put this in one sentence? If I had to say what this whole thing is about in one sentence, what would that sentence be? What is that message? And again, it's a really, really good discipline, and it's not something, you know, these are the things that professional journalists go back to every time, because it's not something that, you know, we have to work at it. We have to keep going back. So again, the message is often not just about information. We're actually writing to persuade. We're writing to communicate something in most of our writing. And so again, think about putting in why is this important? And what's new about this that the person didn't know before? So again, it's about being really clear. Okay, so the first thing about audience. Second thing about the start, the compelling start, the title, the first 5 words, creating a scene, drawing people in, and having a really, really clear message. One, at the most, 2 things that you want them to have read it and be able to say, okay, this was about this, and this is what I've picked up. And make sure that they've picked what you wanted them to pick, and not the 13 other things that, you know, were interesting but not quite the essence of what you wanted to communicate. The fourth tip is about human interest. People respond to people. We respond to stories. You know, again, Raj, you don't mind me saying, someone was talking about your session yesterday, and they say, that story that he told, that's what I'll most take away with me. And it's interesting, you know, all the stuff on tools and everything else, but it's stories, and it's that image, and it's just the way that we are. We respond to people, and the trouble with working in organization development is organization, I mean, what a dull and long series of 2 words. An organization, people don't get excited, well, very few people actually get excited by organization. What we get excited about is people in those organizations. So, you know, you talk about organizations and, organizations suffering from the adverse effects of HIV and AIDS, and people aren't really interested in organizations. But when we talk about people within those organizations, it comes to life. So again, we need to get in any of our communication, again, even sort of internal reports, bring the human interest in. And it's not just a a technique. It's the way that people respond. We respond to people, and that's why, again, right from the beginning, bring a person into your story, because that's what people respond to. People bring colour, bring life, and again, that's where we can bring quotes into it, because quotes are people talking, and again, they bring a colour, they bring a variety, they bring a different voice. We need to, if we're writing about this event, what we want to do is to sort of almost paint a picture so that someone could feel they were here. Really, really difficult to do, but you want to imagine yourself in a position. We like things, when we read things that we like, it's because we're able to put ourselves into the situation and imagine ourselves as being one of the people in the story or something like that. So again, people is so important. It brings the drama, it brings the human element. And particularly I think when we're working in organisation stuff and systems, it'll put 99% of people off unless we can put a person in there. And you've got people within organisations. The last point, and I think if we can get these 5 things done, if we could only do these 5 things, that would be great. I had a few more, but I think these 5 would be, if we can do these, it would be fabulous. Again, when we're trained at university to write, we're trained to write in fairly general terms with lots of qualifications, and we tend to write we tend to write in a quite long-winded way and quite a passive way too. But actually good writing is short and sharp. For example, turn this sentence around for me. After having been shot, the guard was killed and the house was broken into by the burglar. Give that to me in a better way. After having been shot, the guard was killed and the house was broken into by the burglar. Go on, Doreen.
The guard was killed and the house was broken into.
Okay, the guard was killed and the house was broken into.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
The guy was killed by the burglar.
Yeah.
The burglar killed the
guard. And then he broke into the house.
Yeah. It's the getting into the active. The guard was killed is passive. It's something that happened to the person. What we want is for the person to be the active one. So instead of having been shot, the guard was killed and the house was broken into. And again, that's passive. It's something happening to someone. But the more positive thing would be the burglar shot and killed the guard and then broke into the house. It's active, we're interested. Whereas the passive, we just sort of sit back and this happened and this happened. And it's incredibly, I went through, in preparing this, I went through the sort of first page of something I'm writing and just checked how many passives there were. And there are about 6 or 7 passive sentences on the very first page. And we just do it so naturally. And we just need to go through our writing so much and turn it from the passive into the active. Put the person as the subject and not on the receiving end. Another thing is that the sentences need to be short. We can often get rid of certainly in our writing, we can often take something down from 2 pages to 1 page and it'll be better. We'll have communicated probably about the same amount, but instead of lots of different sentences that repeat the same thing or say the same thing in a different way. So short is good in terms of length, but also in terms of sentences. There's all sorts of ways in which we can, there's fog indexes and there's ways in which you can look at the length of words that you use and the number of words in your sentence. But again, if you've got sentences of more than, certainly sentences that say more than one thing, it's a real danger. But we love to write something and then we'll put another clause and we'll put a comma and then because of this and we just sort of make the sentences longer. Again, much of our writing could be improved in terms of readability if we put full stops instead of commas. and then we start again, because it's keeping the pace, it's keeping the interest, it's keeping the things going. Every word must count. If it's sort of, again, just sort of go through it rigorously and get rid of words, good editors, what they do is they take a thing and they just cut it down. And it's, you cut it down and it becomes so much better. The other thing is we need to be quite specific in our writing. And one of my favorite phrases is, there are far-reaching implications of this. Well, what does far-reaching implication mean? Nothing really. I mean, it means that, there might be some sort of problem in the future. It's really general, and I love using it, but it means nothing. And so I have to say, no, what is it that I mean here? What is the thing that I'm talking about? Because far-reaching implications, people will read in it, and it'll be immediately deleted, because there's no weight in it, there's nothing specific, there's nothing to hold on to. And again, one of the problems that I have, and I think many of us in development, is this thing of jargon. Jargon is the sort of shorthand that we get into because we all here understand, what it is that we're talking about, whether it's RBA or something else. But not everyone understands that, and we forget that. And we talk about OD, and actually very few people outside of, probably only a ridiculously small percentage of the world would even understand OD. I mean, what a jargon phrase. What is it that what we're talking about? If your mum and dad read what you'd written, would they understand it? Or would your child, who's, maybe beyond 8 or something, would they understand what you've written? Again, in some of the studies that have been done, the best stuff is actually pitched at someone of about the age of 8 or 9 in terms of readability, not at a university level. And again, there's all sorts of ways you can analyze your writing to find that out. But we really need to get rid of any jargon that we can, and recognize that it's a real temptation to fall into. But just imagine, a friend who isn't part of your world reading it. What would they make of it? Because again, jargon is something that we just sort of skip over, and it doesn't have weight because it's been repetitive. So really, that's all I have to share.